Hello, Theme King crew, and hello, boils and ghouls. Welcome back to Spook Central. I picked up this sign at the trick-or-treat booth on the final day of Midsummer Scream. And welcome back to my spooky study. And that's fitting because we have lots of spooky stuff to study. I attended the last day of Midsummer Scream, and I went to the panel of the man, the myth, the Murdy, where John Murdy, the creative director of Halloween Horror Nights Hollywood, announced a new house, a new scare zone. We got a deep dive into the recently announced Universal Monsters Eternal Bloodlines and the magical place that house will take place. So I'm going to show you all the highlights, give you my thoughts. So enjoy, kiddies! Roll that killer footage. Over an hour and a half wait for general admission to get into the HHN panel. That is the sacrifice I make for you, my viewers. Here's proof. There I am.
Only creative director and executive producer of Universal Studios Hollywood's Halloween Horror Nights, John Murdy.
You guys ready for an announcement right at the beginning here? Of Leatherface is coming to Halloween Horror Nights 2024. Let's go! In 2024, it is the 50th anniversary of this historic franchise. How many of you guys love Texas Chainsaw Massacre? Okay, if I was going to make a Mount Rushmore for horror, which somebody should do, maybe one of you one day will do this, I would put Leatherface, for sure, as one of the four heads on the Mount Rushmore of horror. That's what this franchise means to the whole genre of horror. This is the 50th anniversary of that historic franchise. So the people that we've always dealt with over the years of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, they came to me and they pitched me this idea.
So what exactly does that mean? Well, Murdy would go on to say that we are going to get every incarnation of Leatherface ever from Texas Chainsaw Massacre film history, and the maze will take place in the Sawyer family slaughterhouse.
That runs parallel to the events in the 1974 film, but that takes place entirely at this location you've never been to, the slaughterhouse. Because if I know the Sawyer family from Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which I do, I know that if there's a slaughterhouse that they all used to work at that's been sitting there abandoned, they're probably doing something with it, right?
Murdy went on to do a voiceover that will be at the entrance of the maze by this character, Nubbins, the hitchhiker picked up in the 1974 film, explaining that the Sawyer family has always been in meat.
My family's always been in meat. We used to work at the slaughterhouse. All us Sawyers. Me, my brothers, Grandpa too. He was the best killer that ever there was. But the place got shut down on account of them government contracts drying up after the wars. We was destitute. But you can always find meat if you know where to look.
We will be led into the house by the 17-year-old Leatherface from the prequel Leatherface. Then we will see his collection of masks. Murdy made an interesting point. Leatherface himself doesn't really have a personality, so he puts on a different mask for different situations.
Mask with the makeup when it's the formal occasion, like the dining room scene. And he wears the old grandma mask, the old lady mask, when he's stuck in the kitchen with the old man washing dishes. He just takes on a different mask for whatever job he's doing. So it occurred to me, that's what we're going to do with this house. All these different iterations of Leatherface are going to represent all the different jobs that you would do in a slaughterhouse. So I study slaughterhouses, endlessly. And
So out of his research, Murdy mentioned some of the unnerving places we will see, like the chutes that disorient animals, kind of like switchbacks in a haunted house, and that the Sawyer family will have certain jobs, like the prodder and the stunner. Here we see a rotisserie that I don't want to be involved in on the killing floor, and in the refrigeration truck, Murdy mentioned we're going to have to walk through skinned bodies. If you survive all of that, you're going to end up in the Sawyer family graveyard.
It's the Sawyer family graveyard for all the members of the Sawyer family who lived, worked, and died in this slaughterhouse. Because safety wasn't a big deal when these places were run back in the old days. So a whole lot of them lost limbs, lost arms, or just flat out died. They drug them outside, they hammered a couple of boards together, wrote their name, Bubba, Zedekiah, Malachiah, stuck it in the ground and buried them. But then it's the Sawyer family, they're weird. So one night they went down to the local butcher shop in town, and they stole one of those pig statues that always used to be in front of butcher shops. They usually had a pig, and he was dressed like a chef. And they hauled that back to the slaughterhouse, and they set it up like a religious statue, because to the Sawyers, meat is their god. Grave robbing in the state of Texas is tonight's top story, and someone changes the channel. And then out of the darkness, out of the woods around you, Leatherface, the pretty woman look again from the 1974 film, comes racing at you, drives you inside, and now you're heading towards that classic steel door from the original film, right back to the first murder that happens in the film. So all these things have been happening, were happening right before them, and now you're confronted with Leatherface in the steel door, and I think we'll leave it there.
Murdy would go on to elaborate that with all these horrors we've experienced in the slaughterhouse and the graveyard happening parallel to the 1974 movie, we would come full circle and find ourselves in the all too familiar Sawyer family farmhouse.
Grave robbing in the state of Texas is tonight's top story, and someone changes the channel. And then out of the darkness, out of the woods around you, Leatherface, the pretty woman look again from the 1974 film, comes racing at you, drives you inside, and now you're heading towards that classic steel door from the original film, right back to the first murder that happens in the film. So all these things have been happening, were happening right before them, and now you're confronted with Leatherface in the steel door, and I think we'll leave it there.
Reaction time. I think it's crazy that Universal Hollywood, HHN's getting a major IP that Orlando's not getting, but I love the way they're going to celebrate the 50th. We're literally going to get every Leatherface ever, plus the Sawyer family and the slaughterhouse setting that was referenced heavily in the first film, but was never fully realized. I love that it's going to be parallel stuff happening there, and then we end up right back in the Sawyer family farmhouse. So they are dishing up a huge helping of gore, of horror, of nostalgia, and it's all going to be deep in the heart of Texas. Then Murdy would transition to Universal Monsters.
Universal Monsters, using characters that are rooted in our film history, except one which we invented, which I'll tell you about in just a second. But bringing these characters to light that maybe are lesser known than some of our, standard characters that everybody knows. We did this in collaboration with our colleagues at Universal Orlando. So Chris and I worked with their team to create this original story. So this is a completely original story. And I'm going to show you the monsters. So let's meet the monsters. This is a completely original character. It doesn't exist in the novel, doesn't exist in the films. And I should give credit to the great Crash McCreary. Do you guys know Crash? Legendary creature creator. He works with us on the Universal Monsters franchise. He does all the key art for the posters. He drew this gorgeous picture of Saskia von Helsing. Crash has been in the movie industry. He started with Stan Winston back in the Terminator days. Worked on Terminator. He helped design Edward Scissorhands, the Jurassic Park films, Pirates of the Caribbean, on and on and on. But every year we get to work with Crash, and this is his artwork. So Saskia is the last descendant of this guy. Abraham von Helsing, the famed monster hunter from our 1931 film Dracula. All of his other descendants, who were all male, have all died. They've all been killed by Dracula's daughter. Why? Because this dude killed her dad. Do you remember the end of Dracula? He drives a stake through the heart of Dracula, and that's it. So Dracula's daughter is on a vendetta to wipe out the Von Helsing family, and Saskia is the last one left. Now we paired her with the Bride of Frankenstein, inspired by our 2021 house, The Bride of Frankenstein Lives. Do you remember that house? People have been saying, oh, you gotta bring her back, you gotta bring her back. We listened to you guys. I was like, we gotta bring the bride back. She's such a great character, such a great house. We've kind of taken, and this is Crash's artwork again, and it's inspired by what Lucas Colshaw on our team drew for the Monster Hunter look from Bride of Frankenstein Lives. And of course, she's inspired by our 1935 film, The Bride of Frankenstein, which she is in for exactly, 5 minutes, right? It's so great that the bride has continued to live despite her entire film career being 5 minutes. Maria Zaleska, it was Dracula's daughter. It was the first sequel they made to Dracula. This is Crash's artwork for the mid-transformation look of Dracula's daughter. But we thought, okay, cool, let's take that farther. So when she gets fully transformed, she looks like this. You guys cool if I share a sneak peek? Alright, a little makeup. So this is Patrick McGee Effects, our longtime makeup artist. This is his sculpt for the mid-transformed Dracula's daughter. And then we decided to bring, a couple Easter eggs, a couple of little surprises from the past. Some I'll tell you about, some I won't. We decided to bring one of Dracula's brides back. So this is the mask for Dracula's bride. She factors into the story. And then we decided to pair this character with 2 other female Universal monsters, starting with the She-Wolf, inspired by our 1946 film, The She-Wolf of London. Has anybody ever seen, seriously, She-Wolf of London? Anybody? She-Wolf of London. All right, the last of the female monsters, Anck-su-namun. Inspiration, our 1932 film, The Mummy. In that movie, Imhotep, who gets reincarnated as Ardith Bey, becomes obsessed with this woman named Helen, who's up on screen right now. And he wants to take her and sacrifice her so he can turn her back into his long-lost love, Anck-su-namun. So we took that idea, and we ran with it, and we created this. So this is the look of our female mummy in our experience. You recognize the amulet of Ra that she's wearing around her neck. That's a throwback to our 2022 house, Universal Monsters Legends Collide. That's what the mummy was wearing. And then this is Patrick McGee's sculpt for Anck-su-namun. And I'm in love with this cute little cobra that he sculpted, because that's part of her headband. So that is our monsters. Now, they are joined together in what we call the Unholy Alliance.
He would mention that the maze would start in Amsterdam at the Van Helsing family crypt for the funeral of the final male descendant of Abraham Van Helsing. Of course, Saskia would be there to pay her respects, but the brides of Dracula would show up as well, trying to end the Van Helsing bloodline once and for all. But Saskia would have an unsuspecting ally in the Bride of Frankenstein, who was still hunting Dracula's brides back from the 2021 maze, The Bride of Frankenstein Lives.
The Borgo Pass. We've added our own touches to this, little Vad the Impaler influence of all these impaled corpses. They're getting out of the black coach and they're getting ready to go to Dracula's castle to face this threat. They do something during this house that you should never do in a horror movie. What should you never do in a horror movie if there's 2 or more people? Split up. Yeah, never a good idea. But they do. Saskia peels off to deal with Dracula's daughter and Dracula's brides. The Bride of Frankenstein peels off to deal with the She-Wolf and an Anck-su-namun. And I'm going to leave it there.
Murdy would go on to explain just how special it is to build a Universal Monsters house inside Soundstage 12, which has a ton of rich cinematic history, especially when it comes to the Universal Monsters.
1931, Stage 12 was used to build the interior of Dracula's castle. You know this scene, right? Not only is this one of the most famous movie lines in all of horror movie history, it's one of the famous movie lines in all of movie history. Children of the night, what music they make. All of movies, it's alive. That happened inside the soundstage. And then in 1935, it was used for The Bride of Frankenstein. Now, I always, whenever I share movie history with people, I always try to convey to them like how big that set was, because I don't think you really get an appreciation for it. So I brought a behind the scenes still, the image on the right there. That's how big that set was from 1935. It was also used, of course, in Bride of Frankenstein for another classic scene. When the bride is first unveiled, Frankenstein is all eager to have his friend, and he goes and puts a hand on her, and she hisses at him like a cat, and then he says the immortal line as he puts his hand on the lever, "We belong dead."
Scenes from Back to the Future, Scarface, The Visitor Center, from Jurassic Park, and even How the Grinch Stole Christmas, filmed in Soundstage 12.
Monsters, but wait a minute. Has this been announced yet? Slash. Now Slash is coming back again to do his 6th score for Universal Monsters, his 7th for us at Halloween Horror Nights.
He then announced that we were going to get the long-awaited album of Slash's amazing Universal Monsters maze music. Look at this artwork. It truly looks amazing. Get it? I couldn't be more excited that we're finally getting a Universal Monsters house in a soundstage, let alone Soundstage 12, where so much incredible cinematic history happened. I mean, literally where the steps were where Bela Lugosi walked down and said, "I am Dracula." I think Murdy is going to knock this one out of the park.
Luchadores Monstruosos is coming to Halloween Horror Nights. Is Luchador Cinema. Do you guys know what that is? It's a specific genre of horror that is specific to Mexico, really. Particularly in the 60s and 70s. They would make movies with famous wrestlers, and they would pit them against monsters, like, not our Frankenstein, but usually a Frankenstein. Not our Dracula, but there was always a Dracula. Not our Wolfman, but there was always a Wolfman. Not our mummy, but there was always a mummy. So Pat's idea was to make monster wrestlers that are fighting monster wrestlers, okay?
Here we see some of the art. We didn't get a creature maze, but we do have the water demon, very Gilman-esque. We don't have the Wolfman here, but we do have the horror wolf. And how about the cave monster? Not Frankenstein, but close. And the skeleton man. This scare zone is going to be coming out of Monstros too, and I love this art. It's going to be so much fun. I wonder if they might even have some stuntmen kind of in costume that could do some wrestling moves. You know, in Mexico they have some street wrestlers that come out in the street. We saw that we had the Bat, which is going to be a stealth walker, and here you see the whole gang ready for a big monster mash, and here you see some of the actual masks. Lucha! Murdy also teased a makeover for the Sweet Licks van that looks like it'll be part of a scare zone, punk rock, heavy metal to go with the event merch and designs that we've seen. And I'm betting that that's going to be up at the upper lot upon entrance. And he also teased that Mama Crow would be joining our stilt-walking Crow family. All right, well, that's going to wrap it up. I had an incredible time going to John Murdy's panel. First time I've been to one of them. It's just so great to see all the research. Unfortunately, I had to do a bunch of research on slaughterhouses, but the research, the amount of detail that goes in. So comment below, what did you think of the announcements? The legacy of Leatherface, did that catch you off guard? There's going to be another Texas Chainsaw Maze to celebrate the 50th year. How about the deep dive that he did on Universal Monsters, Eternal Bloodlines, and the fact that it's going to be in the historic Soundstage 12? Los Luchadores Monstruosos, that fun-filled Mexican wrestling scare zone, and some of the other stuff that was hinted. Also, keep an eye out for another video I'll have very soon where I show you my entire experience at Midsummer Scream on the convention floor, all the monsters, the merch, the cobwebs, the coffins, the Crypt Keeper, because I meet the legendary John Kassir. I might even try out my Crypt Keeper voice and see what he thinks of it. So be on the lookout for that. If you like this content, smash that like button like Leatherface with his sledgehammer. consider subscribing. If you don't, I'm going to look sad like this very sad face clown that I saw at Midsummer Scream. Haunt season is upon us, so you know what that means. Whoa. See you in the fog.